Hello and welcome to the Gaggle where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So before we even start, it is, according to the Catholic calendar, Christmas Eve as we're speaking. And for you, it means nothing, but
because I'm in Russia, okay?
Yes, in Russia, we have to wait.
In Russia, they have Christmas after New Year's.
Exactly. Yeah, on January the 6th. So for you, what the hell's going on? But in any way, so Merry Christmas to Gagglers. But one issue that I want to talk about today is the situation with Finland and the Baltic states, because as we know, Finland has been inducted into NATO, though Finland faced no security threats whatsoever, but Finland has now been inducted into NATO, and Sweden could or could not be close behind.
Join us this year.
Exactly. Stoltenberg keeps demanding that Turkey get its act together and allow Finland in. But the United States isn't waiting around for any of these things to transpire. It's signed defense and cooperation agreements with Finland and Sweden, which is separate from NATO, and it's now strengthened its agreements with the Baltic states. Now, as you know, Peter, an argument has been made against Russia, the claim that Russia launched this special military operation to prevent Ukraine joining NATO. They said, no, absolute rubbish, absolutely false, and this is said by the usual crowds, all the Fiona Hills and everybody, and they say, well, it couldn't have been about NATO because look, Finland is now in NATO. Finland shares an 800-mile border with Russia, and yet Russia hasn't said boo about that. So it couldn't have been about NATO membership. But of course,
what a ridiculous argument. But anyway,
of course it's a ridiculous argument. And the fact is that Russia can't do everything all at once, and it is now beginning to sound off about Finland. Putin the other day said, we're going to restore the Leningrad military district, and we're paying a lot of attention to what exactly the United States is doing in Finland, and because the Americans are signing very far-reaching military agreements with Finland, and if you're Russia, you really cannot tolerate the United States just deploying its forces in Finland, right next to Russia's border.
So there's this ridiculous argument that it couldn't have been about NATO. Well, of course it was, because after the coup in 2014, for 8 solid years, NATO was in Ukraine in a very big way. And I've said this before on the Gaggle, but it's worth repeating, is that a great deal of NATO infrastructure, equipment, intelligence, you name it, George, it was around the Donbass, okay? Most of that infrastructure was in the east, obviously with the intention of helping the Ukrainians secure the Donbass back for themselves through military force. That's why so much of, people say it's not, the front isn't moving. Well, that's where all their infrastructure is, okay? That's where the army is, okay? That's why it's all happening there.
Right.
And so the reason why I bring this up is that Finland, for example, possibly Sweden, after Erdogan is paid off one way or another, is that the NATO will start building up infrastructure. Then it will become a problem, everyone. Okay. Now, the Finland is no threat to Russia today, but as a member of NATO, it very, very likely could. And if that is the intention of the American administration, it will be. Okay. Yeah. So these people, it was not about NATO. Okay, well, and Stoltenberg actually admitted that, yes. he admitted that this is all a con job. Yes. But the reason why George wants to do this is because it's very important, okay? Because it's like opening up a new front.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
And
right.
particularly since NATO is getting its face wiped on the ground in Ukraine, they need to find a face-saving way to show that they are a meaningful alliance that has a reason to exist.
It's also very interesting that uh, Stoltenberg and the rest and all of the Western media keep talking about, oh, Russia's threat to the Baltic states, Russia's threat to Finland, Russia's threat to Sweden. But it never occurs to them, well, don't you think that if you move your forces to Russia's border, don't you feel that they might regard that as a threat? I mean, you always say, whatever Russia does is always a threat to the countries on its border, but apparently whatever NATO does, that doesn't pose any kind of a threat. I mean, can you enter the sort of the thinking that, oh, no. You mean you're stationing your forces, Finland, 800-mile border with Russia, and it has a lot of strategic importance, so the Barents Sea,
Arctic.
the White Sea, exactly, the Arctic, Murmansk. I mean, that's a lot of important strategic real estate there that you're now moving into. But apparently, Russia's being entirely unreasonable in complaining. So I wanted to show you this article in first of all in Politico about how the United States is now moving in a very big way to the Baltic states. Here is this article. It says, rush of new defense deals with US shows Europe's growing concern over Russia. Can you imagine? Imagine that's the way of thinking.
Yeah. Here we go. This is the subtitle should be NATO putting cart before horse.
That's right. Exactly. New defense deals. So show growing concern. No, you would think rush of new defense deals with US leads to Russia's growing concern over what's going on its border. No. It's growing concern over Russia. 6 European countries have inked defense pacts with the US this month. 6 European countries have inked defense pacts with the US this month.
Which, on top of NATO, the United States has an obligation to defend these countries. This is an expanding alliance. Expanding alliances of this nature, particularly when it's against a great power like Russia, it's only going to end in a disaster, everyone. Okay?
Absolutely. Yeah. How can it not?
How can it not?
So it says, Northern European countries are rushing to shelter under Washington's security umbrella, rushing to show, please help us.
But why don't they say Washington's skirt? Okay.
Yes. A surge of new defense agreements between the US and allies in Northern Europe allow for fast-track deployment of American troops, marking the latest response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So now when we talk about fast-track deployment of American troops, again, you think, well, don't you think Russia might have some concern about all of this? And don't you think that you will therefore be in the front line if there's any conflict? I mean, they're not going to just sitting there waiting as you fast-track deploy your troops.
Yeah, but, okay, so this all is connected with Ukraine. Number one, what do you think Zelensky is thinking? You're fast-tracking a deployment of American troops to Finland?
Right.
What about me? What about me? Okay. And then the second thing is that have these 6 European countries understood that by denying or not acknowledging that Russia sees this as a security threat, that they may too, as George already pointed out, be putting a target on their back. Yeah. It's not now, but they are the ones that are inviting it.
That's right. That's exactly right. And then it says, new multi-year pacts with Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. So notice already, I already mentioned this, but Sweden, they're not even waiting. They're not waiting for Sweden to be inducted into NATO. So Americans are saying, well, we couldn't care less what Erdogan does.
This is an elopement. They're eloping.
That's right, exactly. Signal a major shift that has occurred within NATO over the past 2 years as member countries race to restock arsenals after sending weapons to Ukraine and steel themselves for a new era of confrontation with Moscow.
Which is their choice.
Their choice. So new era. So this is circumlocution. You're ready for basically war. You want to put yourself on a war footing for an era, not just for a couple of years, but for an era of confrontation. And you think that's all going to work out nicely? That's not there. It isn't going to end up in a shooting war. I mean, maybe some of these small countries think, hey, great, it'll be a shooting war, but we're going to stay out of it because, apparently missiles are just going to be going over our heads. Russia will be targeting America. America will be targeting Russia, and we'll be, sitting in our cafes, safe and sound.
Not likely. And plus,
unlikely.
Member countries race to restock arsenals. So where are these arms going to come from? Is Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania? These are hubs of military industries, right, George? I mean, they're world renowned. No, they're all going to come from the United States. That's why there is a rush. Okay. Because they're all going to be. It's not going to be German stuff. It's not going to be French stuff. It's all going to be American stuff.
Right. No, exactly. But of course, this also creates an enormous, powerful lobby in the United States, because if you sign contracts with military industries to provide arms for all these countries, that's a lot of money, and you then have to deliver. You can't just simply say, hey, we're going to call it a day. We're not going to send any more arms. Hey, but you put in an order for 5 years production. A lot of money is there. Therefore, the pressure will continue where you got to keep providing it. These are long-term contracts. These aren't just sort of, oh, we'll do it this year and then next year we won't do it. So if you're going to order more planes and more tanks and missiles, I mean, those are long-term contracts. Therefore, they're planning on a long war. At the heart,
I'm sorry, George, but and maybe it'll change, but do you think the populations of Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania want to militarize their economies? Do you think, and put their young people into conscription and all? This seems like a real leap, but maybe.
This is what I find very strange, because I don't think so. I mean, if you're a young person, is that really what you want to do? You want to go get killed? Man, I don't know. You've got your whole life ahead of you, and the way you want to spend your rest of your life is to go on a battlefield and get shot in the head. I don't know. It doesn't seem like a very rational choice. I guess again,
when there's an alternative.
When there's an alternative,
it isn't a rational choice, because there are alternatives. Right.
There are alternatives, and that's why one has to assume that these countries are assuming themselves that somebody else is going to do the fighting for them. So Radek Sikorski, who has now returned as Poland's foreign minister, having performed so admirably during the previous government, has already said we've got to get ready for war with Russia. I mean, that's it. He's already said that.
Remember, everyone, Sikorski was at the very center of the Maidan coup. Okay, exactly. He's got his name all over it. Okay,
exactly. He was there as foreign minister. Now he's back as foreign minister. He's already declared. First thing he did as foreign minister was to go to Kiev and hug Zelensky. So now he's saying Europe has got to get ready for war with Russia. I mean, so that's really the new line that's coming. We got to get ready for war with Russia. Now, is that what Poles want? Is that Paul?
Well, what's really interesting, and you and I have talked about it over the last 2 years, and it's actually happening, because Radek Sikorski goes to Kiev, returning to the foreign ministry of Poland, and he's basically telling him, because he's got Washington's back, the Germans don't listen to them, don't listen to the French. You got to listen to me now, because the correlation of forces when it comes to the EU, when it comes to NATO, Poland is the country you can have to deal with first and foremost, okay? The UK, okay, but they're not in the European Union anymore. But this is very much in line of what George and I have been saying, is that we see this center of power in these institutions going to the east, the new Europe.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Because with Ukraine, they suspect that Germany and France aren't really that enthusiastic about this whole war. They kind of give, I mean, Sergeant Schultz has to be continually dragged, kicking and screaming. In the case with, he's got his foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock, literally screaming in his ear. Macron kind of also hems and haws. So who's gung-ho? Well, Poland, that's it. And that's why he says, yeah, we've got to get, and again, Sikorsky is berating Europe, berating them for not being enthusiastic enough about this war. So at the heart of all 6 defense security cooperation deals are guidelines for allowing US troops to operate in the country for training missions and easing red tape for personnel and their equipment to deploy quickly in cases of emergency. So we're going to look at these kinds of agreements that they've signed, particularly the one with Finland, which had enjoyed 75 years of no military alliance, complete independence. They could do whatever they wanted. All that was required is that you don't join the military alliance.
And Finland had 75 years of being an honest broker around the world. How many conflicts around? Bring in the Finns, okay? Because they're not partisan. They're fair brokers. That's over. It's gone.
Yeah, that's right. Helsinki's traditional balancing act between Moscow and the West came to a full stop when the Russian tanks rolled into Ukraine in February 2022, leading Finland to jump into the NATO alliance along with Sweden, which is still waiting for Turkey's and Hungary's votes on its membership. This is not true. Finland has already been moving tacitly towards NATO. And also, these things aren't just done overnight. I was thinking, can I join NATO? Yeah, by all means. Yeah, come on in. These things are planned well in advance. They're just looking for the opportunity to do this very quickly. Hence the need not to have a referendum. Hey, let's just rush this through. And that was always key, because if you just did it, just on a whim, yeah, let's bring Finland in, then there would be, well, why not have a referendum? I mean, this is a drastic change in policy. Don't you think the public should have a say in the matter? No, boom. And Sweden also, no referendum. It's all up to Erdogan. It's that swine Erdogan. But the Swedes themselves, no one's going to consult them. Washington already signed agreements with Iceland and Norway in previous years, meaning the US now has legal frameworks to station troops in all countries of Europe's northern region. Nordic countries also have deep defense ties among each other. They're all part of the Nordic Defense Cooperation Agreement alongside Iceland and Norway, a pact that removes barriers to defense cooperation between countries. And, if we're to believe Seymour Hersh, Norway took an active part in the destruction of the kind of special operation over Nord Stream. And the changes in Europe since 2022 have been historic. Not only have Finland and Sweden overturned decades of neutrality, but this year Denmark ended 3 decades of opting out of European Union defense cooperation, joining the EU's permanent structured cooperation agreement, the framework for defense cooperation between countries, as well as the European Defense Agency. But nothing underscored the renewed focus on deterrence and defense. Deterrence and defense. It's always deterrence and defense. Never threats, aggression, or whatever. No. Deterrence and defense. In Europe, as an event at the Pentagon last Friday, so it was a few days back, that saw Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia all update existing agreements with Washington to reflect new NATO military deployment plans, Ukrainian troop training, and cyber cooperation projects. I should say here, because no one else says it, certainly not Politico, that there was an agreement signed between NATO and Russia, the NATO-Russia Foundation Agreement in 1997, which said that NATO will not permanently deploy forces in the new NATO member states. So what happened to that? So there it is. They actually there's an agreement, and Russia hasn't violated that agreement. So they said no permanent basing of NATO forces in these new states. And then the broader focus on troop deployments was underscored on Monday when Germany and Lithuania signed a historic pact to station 5,000 German troops permanently in the Baltic nation, a move all but unthinkable just 2 years ago. No, Politico is just so beside itself with excitement. Somebody else asking, yeah, unthinkable and absolutely loony. As you know, if you're thinking in terms of the security of Europe.
Yeah, well, the Russians collectively remember when German troops were in the Baltic nations. Yep, yep. Some of those people are actually still alive, George.
That's right. There are people still alive.
Obviously, everyone, I'm making a reference where the Nazi Germany had brought them into their alliance, and we still to this day have in the Baltic nations Waffen SS marching around.
Yeah, exactly. Cemeteries of Waffen SS fighters, which are celebrated. You know, they're commemorated by
in the EU, in the European Union.
That's right. That's right. But you're right. It is interesting because World War II is obviously a long time ago, but there are people still alive. There are still people, not many, but there's still people who have a living memory of Germans in the Baltic states. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen described her country's own 10-year deal with the US as a breakthrough in Danish defense. Indeed, the country's policy since 1953 was to have no bases, no nuclear warheads, and no allied military activity on its soil. But it's very interesting again. Why has Denmark done this? Is Denmark under threat? I mean, you know, are the Russians about to invade Denmark? How are they going to do that? I mean, what's the mechanism for invading Denmark? You're creating essentially, you know, a completely militarized Baltic. I mean, the Baltic Sea is now not just a NATO lake, but it's a militarized NATO lake. And of course, Russia, you know, oh, but we're defensive. We're defensive. You know, we pose no threat to anyone.
Yeah, well, they saw what Ukraine did after 2014 with this purely defensive military alliance called NATO. Okay, yes. And now we have the mess in Ukraine.
That's right. Indeed, yeah. So once Danish lawmakers formally approve the U.S. agreement, it will open the door to U.S. military presence in air bases in Karup, Skrydstrup, and Aalborg. Nice. I'm really excited about that. And then it says Anna Wieslander, director of Northern Europe at the Atlantic Council, said that taken together, the fresh defense, Atlantic Council is a kind of NATO think tank. Not a lot of thinking goes on, but it's called a think tank.
It's purely funded by NATO countries and countries friendly to NATO.
That's right. Said that taken together, the fresh defense agreements that stretch the length of the Baltic Sea will create a region that has a heavier US presence, quote, when it comes to reacting in an early manner, having intelligence and surveillance to act early and be in a place to deter. Deter what? I mean, you know.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, George and I had a lot of fun, made light of all of the active military figures and retired military figures, Victoria Nuland also in this category, how they were looking forward to the counteroffensive, okay? Yes. Very well planned. We're very, very much involved in the, look what happened. And so Anna Wieslander, do you read the papers? Maybe you should watch the gaggle, okay? Because you just put a target on your back for no reason whatsoever, and you're going to have to pay for it.
Well, that's right. I mean, once you present it, you know, everybody claims that what they're doing is defensive. Just because you say that you're defensive, you can say till you're blue in the face. But if it's not believed, then that's it. You're not defensive. I mean, that's the whole point. That's why when you have agreements between states, you have mutual confidence steps that you take, because it's not enough just to say, oh, take my word for it, we're defensive. No one's do it. I mean, remember, people used to have a lot of fun with Ronald Reagan when he used to say "Doверяй, no проверяй," although he didn't know how to pronounce it. The point was trust but verify. The reason he said that, and it was that it's no good just saying, yeah, we're defensive. You actually have to prove that you're defensive. Just saying it doesn't, so just saying, well, we're in a place to defend and deter. Well, no, I mean, it's you are militarizing the Baltic. And this is, that's essentially it's Russia's access to the North Sea and into the Atlantic Ocean. So you're essentially saying, well, we're going to prevent Russia from moving into the Atlantic Ocean.
So create just another tripwire. Great,
That's
great
right.
idea.
Exactly. Allies, including the US, will want to move across borders, and Nordics will want to operate together both in air, land, and sea. This is what we're preparing for. Oh, good.
A good friend of mine was in the U.S. Navy. He was on one of these capital ships. I don't know, it was some kind of missile carrying frigate or something like that. And he told me, he said when they had maneuvers with NATO countries, he said it was always a joke. No one took them seriously. Okay, they put up a couple of token ships and they get to listen to what's going on, but they don't do anything. The reason why I'm saying this is that it's just these countries are passing over to the United States their security and their sovereignty. Okay, when is that a good idea? I mean, considering the last 35 years, when is that a good idea for a country? It's not.
It's a terrible idea. It's a terrible. You have no sovereignty on the most fundamental question, which is security. In other words, your security is now in the hands of somebody else. So whether you get pummeled is now not really up to you. It's up to somebody else, because you don't have an option now. You've signed this agreement. You don't have any option. I mean, the Americans are now directing your foreign policy, your security policy, and if you get thumped, then that's really your problem. You don't now have any choice about whether you're going to get thumped or not.
We'll see. If you get thumped, of course, they will say we're a victim. Yeah. But because you're putting yourself in this position, you are actually a volunteer. Yeah. So,
yeah, that's
you're volunteering to be thumped.
Exactly. That's what they've done. So this is this agreement that the United States has signed with Finland. And what's interesting about these agreements, and nobody ever reads these agreements. I mean, because
except for George.
Yeah, I mean, but it's very hard for me to do. But nobody ever really wonders what's in these agreements. So many NATO powers sign these agreements with the United States, and the public knows nothing about.
Holy shit, George! That looks like one long sentence.
I mean, and again, who the hell's going to read this? That's and they're counting on the fact who the hell's going to read this. But the interesting thing was that, well, anyway, let's take a look at this and then we'll talk about it. So first, consistent with blah, 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 blah. And it says that with concern of few of the U.S. forces, U.S. Finnish contractors depend on other mutually agreed, authorized, unimpeded access to and use of agreed facilities and areas for visits, training, exercise, and maneuvers, transit. But the question is, authorized unimpeded access. So the United States is having unimpeded access to pretty much whatever they want. And they say, oh, well, whatever bases or anything else. And then it goes to list all these things: refueling aircraft, bunkering of vessels, landing and recovery of aircraft, temporary maintenance of vehicles, accommodation of personnel, communication, staging and deploying of forces, pre-positioning of equipment, supplies and materials, security assistance, just about they're covered. Whatever, if there's anything there, it's already listed in that.
Importantly, also, is what's not named, what is not mentioned. Nuclear weapons.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Finns say, "Oh, we're not going to allow nuclear weapons."
Oh, no. The thing is that there's technology right now.
No, of course. Yeah.
You can see if it's going into a country, okay? Yes. And I think from where I live, the people that run this country is not going to take nicely to that.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Include those undertaken in the framework of the North Atlantic Treaty. So then he goes on. In furtherance of such activities and purposes, Finland authorizes U.S. forces to control entry to agreed facilities and areas. So the U.S. forces to control. So if necessary, the U.S. can keep the Finns out. You know, there may be Finnish bases, but we can keep the Finns out if the United States feels that they need to do it. Just like if you say about nuclear weapons and the Finns say, yeah, but do you have nuclear weapons here? None of your business.
Unimpeded.
Yeah, unimpeded. Yeah,
Just call me unimpeded. Okay.
Exactly. That's right. And so
everybody, I don't want anyone to feel sorry for the person that wrote this, because this is just a template where they just put in a different country name. Okay, right. It's always the same. It's uniform.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And agreed facilities or portions thereof that have been provided for exclusive use by U.S. forces, and to coordinate entry with Finnish authorities at agreed facilities and areas jointly used by U.S. and Finnish forces. And then it goes on. And then, when requested, the Finnish executive agent shall make reasonable efforts to facilitate temporary access to and use of private land and facilities, including roads, ports, and airfields, and public land and facilities that are not a part of an agreed facility.
Oh, so your house, it's mine. Move out.
Exactly. So that's right. Well, when we request, and then it's not part of an agreed facilities, but we're still going to make use of them, including those owned or controlled by Finland or by local authorities, by U.S. forces, U.S. contractors, and Finnish contractors, and so on. The parties shall give due regard to operational security concern in the use of agreed facilities. Finland shall make available without rental or similar cost to U.S. forces all agreed facilities and areas, including those jointly used by U.S. forces and Finnish defense forces. And then it goes on, U.S. forces, U.S. contractors, and Finnish contractors may undertake construction activities on and make alterations and improvements to agreed facilities and areas in furtherance of this. So basically, they can start.
You know, this is written like a surrender document.
It is.
This is a surrender document.
Exactly. So the U.S. can basically just start building bases, and the Finns just kind of know, these are our bases. We built them, and you don't really have access to them. We have access.
I don't think Quisling agreed to so many things.
No, I don't think so. And then U.S. forces shall be responsible for the construction and development costs for agreed facilities and areas provided for the exclusive use of U.S. forces, and for the operations and maintenance costs thereof, unless otherwise provided for in a separate arrangement or international agreement between the parties. So that's good of you that you'll build stuff, but you'll actually pay for it. But unless we work out something else, and you have to pay for this construction. And then this is very nice. The pre-positioning of defense equipment, supplies, and materiel. And here we have, blah, blah, consistent with that. U.S. forces may transport, pre-position, and store defense equipment, supplies, and materiel at agreed facilities and areas, and at other locations as mutually agreed. So we'll just keep our stuff at other locations. So if it happens to be in your home, tell the Finnish president, well, you've got a nice little basement here. Maybe we can keep some stuff in the basement. U.S. forces shall notify in advance the Finnish defense forces regarding the types, quantities, and deliveries scheduled of such pre-positioned material that U.S. forces intend to transport or pre-position in the territory of Finland, as well as regarding U.S. contractors and Finnish contractors who make such deliveries. Well, that's nice. They're going to tell you in advance. I mean, unless they won't. The pre-positioned material of U.S. forces and the facilities or portions thereof designated for storage of such preposition material shall be for the exclusive use of U.S. forces. Only we get to use it, so that's all there is to it. U.S. forces shall have exclusive control over the access to, use of, and disposition of such preposition material, and shall have the unencumbered right to remove such preposition material at any time from the territory of Finland. So we keep them there unless we feel that we're not going to keep them there anymore, and you don't have jack to say about it.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Finnish law has much room in this agreement, does it? No, because what it does is it negates all sovereignty. Look, we're not talking about, avocados and tomatoes here. I mean, a country's first order of business is defense of its citizens. This is just given away.
Exactly.
All of them.
Exactly. If I were a Finn, I would think, the days of the Cold War, they were good times for Finland. I mean, it's gone. All those were happy days. Days when Stalin was in Moscow, or Brezhnev, or Khrushchev, or anyone. Those were good times. This is this is quite scary. U.S. forces, U.S. contractors, and Finnish contractors shall have unimpeded access to and use of storage facilities for all matters relating to the prepositioning and storage of prepositioned material, including delivery, management, inspection, use, maintenance, blah, blah. Aircraft, vehicles, and vessels operated by or for U.S. forces shall have access to aerial ports and seaports of Finland and other locations as agreed for the delivery to, storage, and maintenance and removal from the territory.
But it seems to me that, if you're an alliance and a conflict occurs, it's started. We're in a conflict. I can understand this. There's not a conflict, George.
No,
but
exactly.
this may precipitate a conflict.
Exactly. That's the point. You're absolutely right. There isn't a conflict, but this without question will precipitate a conflict. It's an 800-mile border with Russia. You think Russians just going to sit there and, on their hands? Okay, fine, we're no problem here. And then says that in accordance with appropriate coordination and notification procedures, aircraft, vessels, and vehicles operated by or exclusively for U.S. forces may enter, exit, and move freely within the territory of Finland. Well, of course.
Please occupy me, please.
That's right. Such aircraft, vessels, and vehicles shall respect the relevant rules of air, maritime, and land safety and movement. No, that's very good of you. But you see, the point is that they have these status of forces agreement with a number of countries, and most countries, the public has no idea what's in the status of forces agreement. But what was interesting was that the public got a vague whiff of this at the time of the NATO bombing of Yugoslavia, because they demanded that Serbia sign such an agreement with NATO. Now, this was the famous Appendix B, and so they said, well, why should we give this to you? I mean, you're going to have complete freedom to move around throughout, Yugoslavia, and that's it. And so they said no. And then that of course triggered the bombing, because Milosevic has said no to the Rambouillet Accords. We must bomb him. And then when it came out, because all that was secret, nobody really knew about this when the bombing started. And when people found out about it, they said, hey, this doesn't sound nice. How can you just demand of a country that they allow another state to have free access, do whatever they feel like? And then some journalist said, well, it doesn't really matter, because this is just a standard status of forces agreement. Lots of countries sign that. Yeah, well, that's a real problem. Why did a lot of countries sign these agreements and keep them secret? I mean, apart from anything else, in the case of Yugoslavia, NATO was forcing it. I mean, there's actually a point of a gun: sign this or we bomb you. So it's a little different from actually voluntarily signing it. But Iraq, you remember, Iraq refused to sign an agreement like this, and that's why. And then George W. Bush said, "Okay, well, we're going to withdraw our forces. If you refuse to sign the status of forces agreement, then we'll withdraw our forces." And Iraq said, "Great, bye bye." But then, of course, the forces returned. But that was the point. It was that Iraq refused to sign an agreement precisely. In other words, complete immunity for anything that American forces do.
I have to assume, maybe I'm wrong. I have to assume, I have to question, does the average Finn know that their government has signed this?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I mean, this wasn't easy to find. There's, you just found this on I found this on the internet, but it was very, very difficult to find. I don't think they know this. It's not published on any of the US government sites. So these things are actually very difficult, just like the Appendix B that the Milosevic was supposed to sign was very difficult to find, because they kept it absolutely secret. And then, some newspaper published it, obscure Albanian newspaper published it, and then it got publicity. But these things are always kept secret, because if people realize it, they say, hey, aren't we signing away our sovereignty? Yeah, what do you think NATO was?
Yeah,
What do you think NATO membership is?
This is Finland, and so if Lithuania gets in a scrap with Russia, Finland is you're in. You signed.
Yeah,
you're in.
Exactly, because America say, well, that's it. We need all these. You make use of all these facilities, and and it's there. It's in black and white. You signed it. You agreed. We're going to make use of all these facilities, all your roads and railways and ports and everything. Oh, I didn't know that. And then Finland recognizes the particular importance of U.S. forces authorities' disciplinary control over members of the U.S. forces and the effect.
Immunity.
Exactly. Therefore, at the request of the United States and in furtherance of its commitment to mutual defense, Finland hereby exercises sovereign discretion to waive its primary right to exercise criminal jurisdiction over members of U.S. forces.
These are the famed sofas.
Okay. That's right. This is exactly. Say, we should read this again. At the request of the United States and in furtherance of its commitment to mutual defense, Finland hereby exercises its sovereign discretion to waive its primary right to exercise criminal jurisdiction over members of U.S. forces. So that's it. You have no criminal jurisdiction. So if some U.S. soldier is involved in some criminal activity, like raping some local Finnish girl, you don't get to put that soldier on trial. He will just simply be removed and taken back to the United States. Nice. That's self-respecting. In specific cases that Finland considers to be of particular importance, Finnish authorities may withdraw the waiver by providing a statement in writing to the competent U.S. forces authorities not later than 30 days after receipt. And the United States will take, will definitely consider the Finnish request. We will definitely,
30 days. Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
That's called the slow walk.
Yeah, we'll definitely, we'll look into it. No question. Yeah.
You're an ally. You're an ally. We'll look into it.
Finland considers to be of particular importance. And the Americans will say, yeah, but we don't really consider this of particular importance. So there it is.
Stuff happens all the time, believe me, with these sofas. Okay. No big deal.
No biggie. Yeah. For purposes of determining whether an alleged criminal offense has arisen out of any act or omission due in the performance of official duty by a member of the U.S. forces, blah, blah, determination by the appropriate U.S. forces authority in the territory of Finland that such an act or omission was done in the performance of official duty shall constitute conclusive proof of the fact. So,
George, this whole number 6 here, why is it here? Because criminal offenses happen all the time, okay? It happens all the time. That's why they have to put this in, okay?
That's right. And we know that these things have happened many times in the past, and basically there was no prosecution of any U.S. forces.
Nope.
You remember when there was a skiing accident in Italy, and there was again, because of U.S. forces, and many Italians died. And because these unfortunate Italians, they were on a skiing trip, American cock up with this aircraft, and all these Italians died. No disciplinary measures were taken against the against American
Well,
forces.
they also a famous case a few years ago. It wasn't with a military personnel, but it was with a an American diplomat, foreign service officer that killed
Yeah,
a bicycle,
that's
and
right, a cyclist. Yeah,
so they could make 30-day inquiry. That woman was put on an airplane and
that's
gone.
right. And
Okay.
she, ironically, of course, she didn't even have diplomatic immunity. That was made up. The whole thing that she had diplomatic immunity. She didn't even do that. But she exactly, she was on a plane, and the British are special friends, said, "Hey, can you send her back?" And it was Trump. Trump was president. Said, "Nah, we're not going to send her back." And and that's it. She was never sent back. It was clearly totally her fault. She was driving on the wrong side of a road and killed this boy. Nothing. That was it. That was the American attitude.
Well, there
And
was a
that's
case with Samantha Power too, and she was, I think she was in Africa with her checkbook, and her cavalcade ran over a few
Yeah, that
people.
was Samantha Power. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Again, no disciplinary measures taken. No one was punished. Um,
Literally roadkill.
that's right. That's right. Yeah. Um, Finnish authorities may present any information bearing on the official duty determination. The U.S. authorities shall take full account of such information. We will take full account. We definitely will. We'll look over the paperwork.
Pinky promise. Pinky promise.
And the parties shall consult as soon as possible, and we'll consult as well. Yeah, yeah. Okay. In those instances where Finnish authorities believe the circumstances require review of the duty determination, Finnish authorities retain the option of requesting confirmation for higher U.S. authorities.
Well, you can request all you want. That's cool. You could.
We
We're
don't
open to
we don't
request.
have a problem with that.
Request. Go right ahead.
A member of U.S. forces or a dependent under investigation or pending trial by Finnish authorities shall remain or be placed under the control of U.S. forces authorities, of course, if such authorities so request, until the conclusion of all related judicial proceedings. And then in such cases, U.S. forces authorities shall ensure the appearance at such proceedings of the member of the force. U.S. forces authorities shall only request that a member of the civilian component or dependent remain under the control of or be handed over to U.S. forces authorities if those authorities are able to ensure the appearance of the requested person at judicial proceedings. So that's in the hypothetical that they will actually allow criminal proceeding to take place in Finland. But even so, he'd be under U.S. detention, and presumably, if the Finns request a prison term, I don't think the U.S. forces are going to surrender the defendant and say, "Yeah, you can go serve out your prison term in a Finnish prison." It's just not going to happen. U.S. forces authorities shall take full consideration of the terms and conditions provided in writing by Finnish authorities in determining the preventative measures and degree of restraint to be imposed on such an individual, to the extent permitted by the applicable U.S. law and regulations.
Oh, okay. Not Finnish law, American. Okay.
That's right. U.S. forces authorities shall give sympathetic consideration. Oh,
sympathetic.
I like the sound of that, sympathetic consideration, to a request by Finnish authorities for custody of or temporary access to a member of the U.S. forces or a dependent.
I'm sympathetic to this. I really
right.
am sympathetic.
Yeah.
I know where you're coming from. I feel you. Okay.
I feel your pain. I think Trump did that. I think he's in the case of this woman who ran over this boy. He said, I think, something like, "Yeah, I feel your pain," because I think the parents of the boy came to the United States and they met Trump, and Trump said, "Yeah, I feel your pain, but we're still not going to hand her over." So, and again, that's the British. And again, and that was a woman who had no immunity. So this isn't even like U.S. forces, and even then, the Americans wouldn't hand her over. Anyway, members of the U.S. forces, including the civilian component, shall not be subject to any proceedings or civil claims or administrative penalties arising out of acts or omissions attributable to such person done in the performance of their official duties. Of course not. No civil claims, and as such claims may be presented to the appropriate Finnish authorities and processed according to the provisions of the NATO SOFA. Yeah, that's fine. So no civil claims. Too bad. We kind of destroyed your buildings and we killed a lot of people. I know you were skiing. So these poor skiers were planning on a nice holiday. They won't be coming back, but there's no criminal complaint, no civil complaint.
So when you sign one of these things, you have no legal recourse, and you signed it away yourself.
Yeah, exactly. For purposes of determining whether potential civil liability has arisen out of any act or omission done in the performance of official duty by a member of U.S. forces, including the civilian component, certification by the appropriate U.S. forces authority that such act or omission was done in the performance of official duty shall constitute conclusive proof of this fact. So we just simply say it was official duty. Here is the conclusive proof. It was official duty. So forget about your civil claims. We're not paying. And so, yeah. Anyway, that gives you, again, this is a very long agreement.
It's so eye-opening, George. Yes. Okay, yeah. Finland, the countries are different, and when I think of Finland, I think it's a pretty modern place. I've been there. It's very beautiful, extremely well-educated people of great taste, I think. Why would such a group of people do this to themselves? Yeah. Particularly, as George has stressed over and over again, is that Finland and Russia haven't had any problems.
No, okay? No, none at all. And particularly as not only have they not had problems, Russia could have made problems for Finland. But Finland had been on the side of Hitler in World War II and had taken part in the invasion of the Soviet Union. And at the end of World War II, it could have demanded of Finland what it demanded of other allies of Hitler's, which is impose a Soviet regime. I mean, they didn't try to reincorporate Finland into the Soviet Union, but they could have said, hey, we could have a Soviet regime as they did in Hungary.
And there was nothing they could do about it.
Yeah, exactly. They could have done that. They didn't do that. No, so you don't have a communist regime. You're not a member of the Warsaw Pact. You have a good deal. The only thing that the Russians insisted on, you don't join any hostile military alliance. Finland has broken that, and there was no reason for it.
No, none was.
Yeah.
So they're fighting this, okay, because of NATO's extremely flawed, dangerous policy towards Ukraine. You want to get in on the you want to join the party, okay?
That's right. Yeah.
You want to join an alliance where they failed the peace. They failed it. Okay. You want to join an alliance that has failed at keeping the peace.
Right.
What?
Failed to keep the peace. And now you're on the hook because you're on the front line. Do you really think the Americans are going to start off with exchanging missiles with Russia? That's the plan? Oh, yeah, well, we'll take out Moscow. They'll take out New York. You think that's going to be the plan? That is not going to be the plan. I mean, it's going to be the frontline states. That's where the fighting is going to take place. No, it's not going to take place in New York and Boston.
Because everyone, and this has been the nightmare for NATO planners, is that the Russians and the Americans are not going to trade major cities. No. They're not going to do that. No way. Because you have to go up the escalation ladder. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, Oslo is gone. Do we go to the next step? Let's see. Oh, no, I don't know. Yeah. Because that's someone in Washington making the decision. Yeah. Oh, it's too bad about Oslo there.
Exactly. Too bad about Oslo, but
you have my sympathy. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, because ultimately we don't really care that much about Oslo, and we don't care that much about Helsinki. We do care about Boston and Chicago and New York, and we're not gonna destroy those cities for the sake of Vilnius. I mean, we're not going to say, well, hey, it's an attack on Vilnius. That's an attack on New York. That's no one thinks that, well, it's an attack on one is an attack on all. Does anyone really think, if you attack Tallinn, that's the same as attacking Boston? No, of course not. But that's what they've signed up for. And basically they've signed away their sovereignty. You're going to have US forces. They get to do whatever they want. And you just don't have any say in the matter.
This is why this alliance is so fundamentally dangerous, because it is exporting instability in every single way. And George is the only person on the planet that has done research on this and made it public. Okay. I can guarantee you that. I can guarantee you that. Okay. On this Christmas Eve. Okay. I can guarantee you that. Okay.
Christmas present.
And like I said, earlier on, these are pretty uniform sofas. Okay. I mean, you just change the name. Why do I say that? In everything that George read to us, is there one sentence Finland specific? No, not one line.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right.
Did they say according to Finnish law, blah, 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 point A, B, B? No, they didn't. They didn't. They just say it doesn't matter.
That's right. Exactly. And so that, this is what they sign up, and then think, well, somehow NATO has added to safety, to your safety and security. And NATO hasn't added to any. This now you're on the hook. And the Russians have now said, yeah, we're reviving the Leningrad military district. That's a significant. They didn't have that, now they have a Leningrad military district right across the border from Finland. This is not a good deal. You've got now the Russians have revived the Leningrad military district, and then you've signed away your sovereignty to the United States. The United States is militarizing the Baltic, as well as all the seas around Finland. I don't think you've got a great deal here.
Yeah, because George has brought up that awful tragedy, the ski tragedy in Italy. Well, that's as bad as it gets, okay? Because Italy has signed a similar, if not an identical agreement. But the Italians know that if somebody wants to kick up some dust about Russia, Italy is not on the top of the list. They're not there, okay? Right. And they know it, okay? Portugal knows it, Spain knows it, Belgium knows it, okay? Yeah. But Finland, well, you're in a different part of the neighborhood, okay?
Yeah.
You're a sparsely populated country. You're very big. It's going to be very difficult under your current defense procurement to defend all of that territory. That's a big piece of real estate to defend.
Absolutely. It's a small country. It's a population, I think, of 5 million. I mean,
yeah. But it's pretty big geographically.
It's huge.
It's one of the most beautiful places in the world. It's absolutely gorgeous. Okay. And they put that on the line too. Okay. This is just lunacy. I mean, for me, NATO has utterly failed in its purported mission, but it just wants to keep doing it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I think it's a horrific military alliance, a total parasite. It does nothing of any good, anything productive. But it's now just absolutely, got its fangs into Europe, and
it's a vampire.
It's draining it of any life.
It's just a vampire, is what it does.
Yeah. And now you've got more and more countries. Again, Europe, very, very nice place, beautiful. It's a beautiful civilization, and now they're essentially got themselves into a very serious confrontation with Russia for no reason at all.
And you want to bring Ukraine into NATO.
This, yeah.
So Finland, are you prepared for Ukraine to be in NATO? Because I can guarantee the Russians will never let that happen. But hypothetically, the rump state gets into NATO, I think that they will have some unfinished business, and they can say, Finns, come on in, we're going. You're obligated, dude. You got to come with me.
Right. Yeah. That's right.
And,
Yeah,
and the guys in Washington, they have our back, right? Okay, where's Zelensky? Oh yeah, he's living in Panama right now. Okay,
that's I think the unfinished business, I think is something that's going to be addressed towards Finland, because ultimately you've still got a real problem here, which is you can't really have the United States posing so dire a security threat to Russia. I mean, it's a vital piece of real estate. Finland, again, stretches up to the Arctic. And all of that has been part of Russia's vital security. You got Murmansk, the White Sea. If you're going to start installing
even
all of your
Saint Petersburg, even Saint
exactly,
Petersburg.
you're within shouting distance of St. Petersburg. You're going to put all your electronic surveillance equipment there and everything. I mean, the Russians cannot just simply sit still.
Well, George, the destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines, it could turn into a metaphor. So that missile battery that you have across the border, it blew up, but it's like the Nord Stream 2, pipeline. We'll never know how it happened. No, mark my words, okay? If NATO infrastructure in a meaningful way it starts being installed in countries like Finland and later Sweden, Article 5 will be tested, everyone. It will be.
I think so. Yeah,
it's inevitable. It's inevitable.
Because it will do it. And there's no question. I mean, guys, do you think NATO will expand their infrastructure in Finland? There's no question. Of course it will. I mean, that's the way NATO is. I mean, they've already signed this, already said we're going to pre-position equipment. The next start is putting in all the electronic surveillance equipment right there within shouting distance of St. Petersburg.
And Stoltenberg had a good chuckle here. Instead of less NATO, Russia got more NATO. Ha 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 ha. Well, Finland, that should be cold comfort for you. Really?
Yeah.
This is so irrational. We should be moving in a completely different direction. Dissolve NATO, reconstitute a Helsinki process, the indivisibility of security. This is where we need to go. And we could. It's theoretically possible to completely demilitarize the Eurasian land space from Portugal all the way to the Urals. It's not impossible. It's not impossible.
Yeah.
And it should be something we strive for, but we're going in the reverse direction.
Yeah. No, exactly. The direction is going is towards division and armed confrontation. Well, when there's armed confrontation, then chances are it will lead to.
Well, if you're planning for it,
it's going to happen. It's going to happen. As Putin often brings up the Chekhov's famous observation: if you see a rifle hanging over the fireplace in Act 1, you can be sure that rifle is going to be used in Act 3. And I think it's very apt that is indeed the case.
Well, the Finns are holding up a rifle right now. Inexplicably, there's no reason, none whatsoever. But it's called elite capture. They've captured elites. No referendum, no vote on it, no way. And these people, it's just a revolving door. They go to the U.S. War Academy, all these buffets, and they always have these little nice, little IDs around their neck they have the, what do they call it? What is it? The swipe. They can swipe into this room and all that. It's so cool. You're part of the club. Yay! Okay. It's really. Where's that? The Finns are known to be very stoic people. They don't talk much. They're kind of quiet. Okay, they're thinkers. It's cold. It's dark. Time to think. Okay, where's the thought process here, folks?
There really wasn't. There was no thought process, and they made sure of that. They made sure that by saying no referendum. That was the key thing when they made that. The Finn chick, they got her in power. She made that call. We're going to move into NATO, and absolutely insisted that no referendum, and they never really explain why no referendum. Well, because we have the opinion polls. The opinion polls show Finns are overwhelmingly in favor of NATO membership, but that's not a criterion. You don't just go by opinion polls, because polls change. And the whole point of a referendum campaign is that the issue gets debated.
And also, George, what was the public opinion poll? Do you like or dislike Russia? We dislike. Well, leap of faith. Leap of faith. Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I know. I used to work in a place where they did public opinion. They did polls and questionnaires. You can get any answer you want, but depending on how you write it.
Of course. Okay. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of polls, is to generate support for something, and then you frame the question in the way you want to frame it, and then, hey, the public is with us. Look at the poll. I mean, it's a classic. Just like whenever you're going to use force against a country, the public says, I don't like this idea. Well, then you formulate the question in a way, with like Saddam. Well, if it's true that Saddam Hussein was responsible for the 9/11 attack, do you think the United States should respond by invading Iraq? Well, you say, yeah, why not? Oh, 80% of Americans are in favor of going to war against Iraq.
Okay, here's a trick question, because I don't know the answer to it. What was Quisling's first name? Because you're a Quisling. He acted like a Quisling, but we never talk about his first name.
That's a very good question. I'm not sure we were exactly Quisling.
Something to look up in the new year. But the reason why I bring it up is that I don't even think the famous Quisling would have signed such an agreement.
No, I think that's right. I think Quisling, probably one of those people who's got a kind of a bum rap in history, because his name was coined for that purpose, but he probably was, actually much less of a Quisling than other leaders. So, but he nonetheless always gets the short end of the stick. Oh, Quisling, he must be really terrible. But yeah, I mean, this agreement is I'm sure is worse than the agreement that Quisling signed with the Nazis.
Yeah. Well, this is a kind of sad way to end Christmas Eve. Okay. But it's important to talk about this again. And kudos to George. George did the hard work on this here. It was hard, even for me, to be honest. But,
it is grueling.
Where George is a stickler for the fine points of things, which is really important. Okay. I feel rest assured that most people in Finland have no idea what's in this agreement at all.
No, absolutely. Any more than anyone in Europe has any idea what is in these sofas. It's and they make sure that nobody knows. I mean, it's never discussed, never debated. The media keep quiet about them, and that's it. Because if they knew, I think there would be an absolute uproar, and the public say, "What? We signed this? We agreed to this." So they always make sure that this is kept secret.
Well, good luck, Finland. You had a good gig for a long time, and it should have been the gig that other countries should have emulated. Okay, you chose the wrong path. There's the fork in the road, and you went the wrong way, and nothing good is going to come of it at all. All right, it's been a long one here. This is The Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on Locals, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. George, will you be doing your
live stream on Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time? It's Boxing Day, but at The Gaggle, we're always on the job. So 3 p.m. Eastern Time, come with comments, criticisms, ideas, suggestions, opinions. Everything is welcome. On the way out the door, think about little Buddy, because Buddy's saying, I've never signed any kind of a status of forces agreement.
He's a big sofa guy, but not that sofa.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not buying into these sofa agreements. So he knows that I'm going to get the short end of the stick. So in Buddy's spirit, in that spirit of maintain my sovereignty, let's see if we can put a few bob into Buddy's tip jar, in the Christmas spirit. So we're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve the technology, and above all, will, maintain body's sovereignty. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.